Trump signs an executive order that is so much more dangerous than it looks. And I've got 2 interviews this week. I'm joined by Jamie Raskin to discuss an Epstein update and John Favro from Pod Save America to talk about his feud with the vice president. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen, and you're watching No Lie. Trump just signed an executive order that's getting virtually no media coverage, which I suppose makes sense considering he's sending troops into Portland, he's prosecuting former FBI Director James Comey, firing U.S. attorneys who don't agree to engage in vindictive prosecutions, he's sicking his FCC on comedians who hurt his feelings. But the executive order here designates Antifa as a terrorist organization. And at first blush, that doesn't really seem effective because Antifa isn't like a real thing. There's no organization called Antifa. There's no membership, no meetings, no central structure, no leaders. So, great. Trump designates a group domestic terrorists that don't actually exist, meaning it's not really worth the paper it's printed on. But that's actually the wrong way to think about this because, in fact, Trump wants this executive order to focus not on a specific group, but rather on an amorphous idea. Why? Because then he can bunch anybody he dislikes into this group. It is expressly because Antifa isn't a real thing that he can say that someone he doesn't like is part of Antifa. And if they say that they don't have a membership, he'll say, correct, no one has a membership, but you share their ideals, meaning you fall under the umbrella of this organization. And the reality is that this is the natural conclusion of his effort to continue basically criminalizing the very idea of progressivism. Remember, he has sued or attacked law firms aligned with the left, universities aligned with the left, media outlets aligned with the left, nonprofits aligned with the left, and now this is his way of going after regular people who are aligned with the left. And think about what he did right after this executive order was signed, threatening to send federal troops into Portland. This way he can go after regular people, catch them in the dragnet that is his Antifa executive order. He's covering every base he can here. And if he's not going after you personally, he is doing everything he can to have a chilling effect on anyone even thinking about speaking out. But here's where I draw some hope. He is doing this from a place of extreme weakness. Let's be clear, you don't go after comedians if you are confident in your agenda, if you're confident in your ability to win. His poll numbers are plummeting on every single issue, including the economy, inflation, and immigration, the issues that he literally won the 2024 election on. He is more unpopular than Joe Biden was at this point in his term. The only president in modern American history who he's about even with is himself during his first term. And remember, he lost 41 seats in the House during the 2018 midterm cycle. Americans can see the bill of goods that they've been sold. And remember, this feels almost insane to say, but dude ran as a populist. He pretended he cared about the price of eggs. And since he's taken office, he's sent the cost of everything surging. Inflation's been rising every month since March. He's failed to stop the Russia-Ukraine war that he promised he'd end on day one. He vowed to protect earned benefits and instead ripped healthcare away from 17 million Americans. The Epstein files not only didn't get released, but Trump is in them, and he's got the entire federal government covering it up. And the only major piece of legislation that this Republican Party has passed is a tax cut that overwhelmingly favors millionaires and billionaires. Farmers are getting fucked, the working class is getting fucked, small business owners are getting fucked. They know it, and Trump knows it. That is why he's careening full tilt into authoritarianism, because he 100% knows, he is sure that Americans aren't buying the con and that they're preparing to revolt against the GOP. So he'll continue to use every tool at his disposal to make us feel powerless, but we're not. The Jimmy Kimmel situation just days ago is proof of that. We just need to recognize our power here. And that comes not just from organizing, but from every single one of us who is watching and listening right now, recognizing our own agency and bringing people into this process. When we protest, that means we bring 10 people along. When we boycott, bring 10 people along. And when it comes time to vote, bring 10 people along. We have a window, shrinking though it may be, to get ourselves out of this, but it means that all of us have to be prepared to do something. No one is saving us here. No prosecutors or attorneys or judges or the Democratic Party. It is up to us to wake up, acknowledge the agency that we have, and save this country for ourselves. Next up are my interviews with Jamie Raskin and John Favro. No Lie is brought to you by Strawberry.me. We spend, about a third of our waking hours working, and yet so many people feel stuck in jobs that they've outgrown or never really wanted in the first place. And look, I've heard it all. What if the next move is even worse? I've already put years into this place. I can't afford to take a wrong step. Who am I without this title? Isn't everybody kind of miserable at work? And look, those feelings are real, but they're also why so many people stay stuck. That's where today's sponsor, Strawberry.me, comes in. They connect you with a certified career coach who helps you go from where you are to where you actually want to be. Whether you're looking for a change or feeling stuck or facing a big decision or just seeking professional growth. It's like therapy for your career. A coach helps you cut through the noise, define your next move, and turn vague goals into a real-world plan with the kind of accountability that keeps you moving forward. Plus, their coaches are thoroughly vetted and assessed for their qualifications and expertise and come from a wide range of backgrounds, experiences, and specializations. So don't leave your career to chance. Take action, own your future with a coach in your corner. Go to strawberry.me/BTC to claim your $50 credit and get started. That's strawberry.me/BTC. Stop settling, start building the career you actually want. No Lie is brought to you by Everyday Dose. Now, for those of us who are looking to take care of ourselves, there are plenty of supplements on the market to be able to do that. But supplement stacks are expensive and they're hard to keep up with. Everyday Dose is affordable and covers all of your bases in a cup of coffee. It takes 30 seconds to make, and you get coffee plus a bunch of supplements with vitamins, minerals, and amino acids. Everyday Dose is coffee plus benefits. It combines 100% Arabica coffee with powerful ingredients like lion's mane and chaga, collagen protein, and nootropics to fuel your brain, boost focus, and give you clean, sustained energy all day long. No crash, no jitters, just clean, sustained energy. Two products here to highlight, Coffee Plus and Coffee Plus Bold. Coffee Plus is a mild roast, light and smooth, low acidity, which means it's easy on sensitive stomachs, and it has mellow energy. Coffee Plus Bold is a rich blend of medium roast 100% Arabica coffee, robust and full-bodied, yet smooth. Extra boost of energy. Both are 100% Arabica coffee, have functional benefits, and are mold-free. Everyday Dose does third-party testing. Get 45% off your first subscription order of 30 servings of Coffee Plus or Bold Plus. You'll also receive a starter kit with over $100 in free gifts, including a rechargeable frother and gunmetal serving spoon by going to everydaydose.com/BTC or entering BTC at checkout. You'll also get free gifts throughout the year. That's everydaydose.com/BTC for 45% off your first order. No Lie is brought to you by Prize Picks. You and I make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement this season on Prize Picks, where it's good to be right. I'm especially excited about Prize Picks because with politics being as grim and heavy as it's been, football has been the one thing to actually get my mind away from this stuff. And there are some especially exciting parts of Prize Picks that I've been focusing on lately. The first week has a few player call-outs. So for example, Saquon Barkley, they're offering up more or less than one rushing touchdown. Anybody who knows Saquon Barkley knows that it's very likely that he'll get more than one rushing TD. So that's an easy call in my book. And there are other ones exactly like that. Prize Picks is simple to play. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 players' stat projections. If you get your picks right, you could cash in. Prize Picks is also the best way to get action on sports in more than 40 plus states, including California, Texas, and Georgia. And they put their users first. So all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. They offer Venmo, Apple Pay, MasterCard, and more for quick and easy deposits into your account this football season. Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your takes into cash all season long on Prize Picks. So download the app today and use code BTC to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code BTC to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. I'm joined now by Congressman Jamie Raskin. Thanks for joining me.
I'm psyched to be with you, Brian.
So let's talk about a situation that Republicans are trying to stave off as much as they can, and that is this Epstein situation. We now have enough members of Congress who have signed on to the discharge petition with the newly elected Democratic member in Arizona's 7th Congressional District. So now that that's happened, can you walk us through next steps in terms of actually getting some transparency on this issue?
Yeah, the arrival of Ms. Grijalva is a game changer for us because we now have the votes we need, the signatures we need to discharge the petition from the clutches of the leadership, which doesn't want us to be voting on that bill. There's overwhelming support in the country among Democrats, Republicans, independents, everybody to release the Epstein files. And this was one little parcel of corruption that we thought Trump and the Republicans would side with us on in terms of exposing the corruption to the world and having some transparency. But of course, after Trump had 1,000 FBI agents working round the clock to go through all the files and the videos and the pictures, and they came back with apparently lots of appearances of Donald Trump, and they decided to sweep the whole thing under the rug. So, we believe that if we can maintain the discharge rules the way that they are, we're going to be all right in terms of forcing the bill onto the floor and getting a vote where it will pass overwhelmingly. and then it will go to the Senate. But the Republicans are talking about changing the rules.
And so what would that look like if they did try and change the rules?
They could try to increase the number of signatures you need to go from a majority to some kind of supermajority. They might bury it in further procedural complexity and convolutions. Who knows what they might do? We've seen them do this kind of thing before. And we just have to make clear to the public what's going on. This is a cover-up. This is a complete cover-up when Kash Patel and Pam Bondi and Donald Trump were campaigning on release of the Epstein files and revving up the MAGA base on this. They were saying that they would, blow the cover on this international child sex trafficking ring. And now that it's clear that Donald Trump is, if not directly implicated, in at least somebody who knew about a lot that was going on, they just want to sweep the whole thing under the rug.
When you talk to your Republican colleagues, and I'm not talking about Thomas Massie because he's been consistent on this issue, but is there some, at best, discomfort from these people who recognize that they're putting all of their credibility, staking their reputations on this new cover-up where they just basically try and prevent any transparency on the files or accountability for the people that were involved? Is there anything that pushes them away from this steadfast inability to move away from this issue in deference to Trump?
Well, let's give credit where credit's due. We've got Marjorie Taylor Greene. Yes, that Marjorie Taylor Greene. We've got Nancy Mace, at least for now. We have Lauren Boebert, and we have Massie, all of whom have sided with all the Democrats in saying, release the files. Kash Patel said it himself going on podcasts. This is totally within the control of the FBI director. Don't give us any nonsense about old cases that had to do with Epstein and Maxwell and a grand jury hearing and a few dozen pages there. That's an absolute distraction and deflection from the more than 100,000 pages worth of materials that were collected directly by the DOJ and the FBI. They raided Epstein's home. So we can find out everybody who was involved in this. We know from 4 banks, including JP Morgan, that there were $1.5 billion worth of suspicious activity reports. That means this is at least $1.5 billion business operation. Don't tell me that was all for just one guy.
And is it possible, knowing that there are these transactions that might point to certain people who this administration and this Republican Congress are clearly trying to protect, is there any way for Democrats in the minority to be able to compel some of that information, or does it solely rely on Mike Johnson and John Thune having enough of a spine to defy Donald Trump and actually get this stuff brought forward?
Well, we've been working with the survivors of the abuse who've really been a motor force here to bring out as much information as possible so people know. But they also are joining us in the call to release the files. Ultimately, we're not going to be able to get the administration to release the files without a law compelling them to do that. That's why we've got our discharge petition. That's why we're fighting for a vote on the House floor, and then we'll be fighting for a vote in the Senate. And I would not want to be a member of the House or a senator of any party or any persuasion who votes against doing it. So I think once there's an actual vote, we're going to win.
Just to clarify, at the end of this process, though, the discharge petition will compel a vote on the House floor, which is something that Mike Johnson doesn't want to happen because he doesn't want anybody going on record for this thing. He wants this whole thing put to bed.
Because that's what Trump wants.
That's what Trump wants. It'll then send it to the Senate, where it'll put those senators in difficult positions of having to decide whether they want to protect a pedophile ring in deference to Trump, or actually vote their conscience and do the thing that they said during the campaign they wanted to do, which was get some transparency on the Epstein situation. But if both of those succeed, at the end of the line, this thing does have to get signed into law by Trump himself. So how are you thinking about that part of it?
Corruption operates on secrecy, and Donald Trump so far has been getting the Republican leadership to follow him in saying, there's nothing to see here, and we just want this whole thing to go away. It's too late. The cat is out of the bag. So Trump would be forced to decide whether or not to sign it. If he vetoes it, then we would be forced to take a vote to see whether we could get 2/3 in the House and Senate to override it. A pretty extraordinary thing for this matter, but it does go right to the heart of their operation, which is all about corruption. Most of it is money corruption, which is, the pattern with authoritarian regimes, that people are in there to take bags of cash, like Homan allegedly.
Like Tom Homan literally did, yeah.
A bag of $50,000 in cash in return for steering government contracts once he got in. But Trump himself has made billions of dollars since January. But what's all that money for? Well, for a lot of people who are that corrupt and that sinister, it's not enough to have that money. You want to be able to traffic in human flesh and exploit girls and engage in international child sex trafficking and so on. And it is part of that political operation to cover up that kind of crime too.
Yeah.
And so that's why this is important. It goes right to the MO of the Trump regime.
And one different instance that we have at play right now is the effort by Trump and his FCC, with the help of FCC Chair Brendan Carr, to quash any public dissent of this administration. So as far as the Kimmel situation is concerned, what oversight does Congress have in terms of hauling Brendan Carr in, given the overt violation of the First Amendment that we saw with this federal government trying to get Jimmy Kimmel canceled because they were upset that a comedian said mean things about Daddy Trump?
Yeah, I mean, this is just pure government censorship. You could see it very clearly in another country. If you had the president of the country ordering the commercial broadcast regulators to shut down a comedian who made fun of the president. And that's basically what just happened. And Brendan Carr, the chair of the FCC, who also was a critical actor in Project 2025, views himself as an instrument of political revenge and retaliation for the president, and openly browbeats and coerces his broadcast licensee regulated entities to do the political will of Donald Trump. So if Congress cared, that is, if the majority in Congress, if the narrow Republican majority cared, we would haul them in to talk about this outrageous violation of the First Amendment and freedom of speech. But the Republicans, again, are just proving themselves completely invertebrate and unprincipled and just going along with it, despite all of their increasingly fraudulent rhetoric about the First Amendment. They just don't believe in it. They only support defending the right of free speech for people who agree with them. Right. That's not free speech.
What was your reaction to seeing some of the old tweets that Brendan Carr had posted, kind of extolling the virtues of free speech and lamenting any push toward government censorship, only for him now to be the principal actor and actually trying to do something that's never happened in this country, which is legitimate government censorship, the issue that they planted their flags in purporting to detest?
But that's what it means to them. They defend free speech for right-wing speakers. That's it.
Yeah.
And, they want to open up a whole investigation and political onslaught against, George Soros and the left and the far left, Antifa, whatever they're calling it today. And that obviously is an effort by them to use the power of government to silence and censor people who are their political opponents. Again, that's the opposite of free speech.
It was interesting that there is a very small faction of these Republicans who signed on to the Epstein effort that includes Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, Thomas Massie, and Nancy Mace. And there's also a small faction of Republicans who decided to speak up as it relates to this Jimmy Kimmel situation. You've got Rand Paul and Ted Cruz, even Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens. So strange bedfellows indeed, but bedfellows nonetheless. And so what was your reaction to seeing that this was an issue that is so unpopular as far as Trump is concerned that he managed to unite Ted Cruz, Rand Paul, and the entire left?
Well, I'm glad that there are at least a handful of people left on the right who are willing to stand up for free speech across the board. I mean, imagine if Joe Biden's FCC chair was castigating particular news networks and saying, you've got to get rid of this person, you've got to get rid of that person. We can do it the hard way or we can do it the easy way, but you're going to have to do our will. I mean, that is totally what an authoritarian society looks like. It's just mobster talk. And increasingly it feels like the Trump administration is turning us into a gangster state where they pardon the people who actually commit crimes, like nearly 1,600 people who violently assaulted police officers on January 6th and tried to overthrow the government. They put those people in power. Then they don't prosecute people who are their political friends, like Mayor Adams, people who are willing to go along with them. And then they antagonize, they demonize, they vilify, and then they try to investigate and prosecute people who haven't done anything wrong. And that's what's going on with like Comey. That's what's going on with Adam Schiff. That's what's going on with Letitia James and so on.
You know, you taught constitutional law at American University for years prior to becoming a member of Congress. Watching the overt attacks on the Constitution that are taking place right now, how does this make you think about all of this? How does it make you think about the resilience of the Constitution? Do you have hope that we can see our way out of this, or do are you succumbing to the forces of what I think Trump wants, which is for people to feel despairing and hopeless?
Oh, no, I don't feel despairing and hopeless at all. I see people fighting back all over the country. I see people fighting back in the law firms against the attempt to censor and subdue the law firms. I see people fighting back in the colleges and universities against the attempt to trample academic freedom and have Donald Trump control the universities. I see my constituents at the NIH fighting back against the effort to gut scientific research and to replace science with propaganda and disinformation. People are fighting back in every sector of society, but we are definitely in the fight of our lives, and we need everybody engaged and everybody involved. And it just won't do for people to sit back and say, oh, I'll let the Democrats do it, or, oh, I'm down on the Democratic leadership, I'm not going to do anything. Everybody needs to be a leader in this moment. Everybody.
As you kind of watch this process play out and head toward midterms, what should people know about the importance of making sure that Democrats have a House majority and, if possible, a Senate majority as a way to check this president?
Well, look, we are now up against this extreme gerrymandering that's begun in Texas. All power to Prop 50 and the people of California who are fighting back and not taking it lying down. But they've already moved on to Missouri. They're moving to Kansas to go after my friend Sharice Davids. They're talking about Ohio and Florida. We need to do whatever we can to stop that and to fight back. But ultimately, what we need is a huge popular movement to take back Congress. And we've got to take back the House of Representatives and cut this reign of terror in half. That's why I'm working with the Democracy Summer Project all over America to galvanize thousands of young people to spend next summer with us, the summer of 2026, in the fight of our lives, so that we are winning every swing seat in the country, and we surprise them by winning in even places where it feels like we've been gerrymandered into oblivion. We are going to be fighting everywhere to win back Congress.
Well, Congressman, I appreciate your help, and thanks for the fight.
Thank you for what you're doing, Brian.
I'm joined now by the co-host of Pod Save America, John Favro. Favs, thanks for joining me.
Of course.
So you've had a busy week. You are embroiled in a public feud with the Vice President of the United States. So I'm going to put right here on the screen tweets between your interaction with you and J.D. Vance. So the Vice President had tweeted, "This obsessive attack on law enforcement, particularly ICE, must stop. I'm praying for everyone hurt in this attack and their families." And of course, that was community noted with a note that says, according to ICE, the 3 individuals shot were ICE detainees, not those, not ICE agents themselves. So you tweeted to him, "The Vice President is not a reliable source of information. This is now the 5th or 6th time he's posted a political take contradicted by facts from his own law enforcement agencies." To which the Vice President, second in line to the presidency, tweeted at you, "The gunman had anti-ICE messaging carved on the bullets he used. What precisely did I get wrong, dipshit?" So I got to ask, first and foremost, what is the immediate aftermath of being attacked by the Vice President like?
First of all, I've been called worse. But also he's second in line to the presidency. Doesn't seem like he has much to do. So the immediate aftermath, it was fine. The way I found out is that one of my friends texted me and said, "Have a good day, John." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And then
never a good thing.
And then I looked on Twitter and I was like, "Oh, that asshole."
Yeah.
But the reason that I got into it with him is I think it is very, at best unhelpful, at worst dangerous for government officials, particularly the Vice President of the United States, to come out with political takes before an investigation has even begun.
Yeah.
The suspect hadn't been identified yet. There was no evidence yet. And it turns out that the suspect who killed himself ended up having messages that were anti-ICE and seemed like that. But we didn't know that at the time. And even now, we don't know the extent of his motives. And then J.D. Vance, right after he was tweeting at me, went and gave a speech and called it left-wing violence and blamed Democrats and blamed Gavin Newsom for calling the government authoritarian, for using the word authoritarian, saying that is violent, blamed people for wanting ICE agents to take off their masks so that we didn't have masked agents running around throwing people in vans. And so it really seemed like more of an attempt to silence dissent, silence critics, and to cripple the opposition, because now they're going after progressive groups, than it did anything else.
Well, there's a small faction on the right that is trying to claim that, like, oh, we're just looking to tamp down the violence that's happening at the hands of the left. But when you come out, as soon as something happens and spread kind of like a incendiary rhetoric, isn't that doing the polar opposite of the thing that you purport to want to be done in the first place? Yeah,
and we can go back and forth on the hypocrisy here, but I think what they're really up to is they have been wanting to go after left-leaning organizations
and just looking for any pretext to be able to
crack down on free speech for some time. We know this because Stephen Miller gave away the game when Charlie Kirk was assassinated. He said, Charlie's last message to me was like, go after those left-wing groups, and we've been working on this for a while. So they'd been working on it before the assassination, and now every time there is violence, every time there's political violence, every time there's a shooting, before we even know the facts, they're just using it as another excuse to engage in this government crackdown.
One big element of that is that using an excuse to go after any political group is like a small part of a larger whole. We saw that Trump has been pushing his U.S. attorney in the Eastern District of Virginia to go after his political opponents. He tried to get his own appointed U.S. attorney in Eastern Virginia to go after Letitia James. They said there was no basis to actually do a prosecution, and so that person was just fired. And this, again, was a U.S. attorney appointed by Trump himself, replaced by someone who was perfectly willing to do Trump's bidding. We have a clip here of Donald Trump being asked about the prospect of subsequent prosecutions. Here's what he had to say.
I'm James Comey. Now that James Comey has been indicted, who is the next person on your list in this retribution?
It's not a list, but I think there'll be others. I mean, they're corrupt. These were corrupt, radical left Democrats, because Comey essentially was he was worse than a Democrat. I would say the Democrats are better than Comey.
So there's no list. There is just a number of names in a particular order that may or may not have something to do with each other.
Who he has talked about numerous times,
right.
Said that they're guilty. The president of the United States now determines guilt or innocence, determines who will be charged with a crime and who will not be charged with a crime. The other side of the coin here is, Tom Homan, who's running ICE for him, is on a video and recorded taking a $50,000 bribe, but they're not looking into him. So this isn't justice. This is the president gets to decide justice, and that's what happens in authoritarian countries.
Right, and the fact that this is on that point of an authoritarian country, I think going back to what we were talking about earlier, using every instance as a way to kind of amplify the rhetoric and increase like the acrimony in our politics. Like, this is where Trump. There are a lot of people that are saying that Trump's job right now is to lower the temperature, but Trump's goal at the end of this is to be an authoritarian, and the way that authoritarianism thrives is expressly by allowing one person to be a demagogue. And so if he brought down the temperature, he wouldn't be able to accomplish his goals. Like, he doesn't want to preside over this country in a democratic way. He views himself as an autocrat, as an authoritarian. And so the way that you do that is by demagoguing your enemies. And so expressly, when we have these scenarios where there's violence, the only job for him is to make sure that he can blame the left.
If no one complained and no one opposed him and no one spoke out against him, he'd be fine, right? And everyone could just live their lives normally. But if people start to complain, if people don't like the way he's running the economy, if people don't like what he's doing with ICE, if people have any kind of complaints about his corruption, well, then he's going to use the power of the state to silence you. That's what's going on. And this idea that we can't call the government authoritarian, that means that if you really did have an authoritarian government, they could do whatever they want, because the only thing you're not supposed to do is call it out.
Call out exactly what it is.
Right. And I do think that the government threatening to silence anyone calling them authoritarian is not the most effective way of beating the charge that you're authoritarian.
That's right. To that end, we had a bit of a weird update. So there was a video that swept across the internet of an ICE agent throwing the wife of a detained migrant onto the ground in a facility, in a courthouse, rather. And that ICE agent, we had just found out today, has been let go, he's no longer working for the federal government. And so this was striking because it was one instance where an otherwise completely untouchable agency saw some small modicum of accountability, which I was surprised at, because we've seen so many of these instances happen where there's no accountability, where it's just baked into the cake. Nobody can stand up to these people and nothing ever happens. Why do you think this particular instance was different, where you have an ICE agent who's done something that we've seen countless times in videos that have swept across the internet before, and yet in this instance, that particular ICE agent was let go?
I don't know exactly what happened there. There's a few things that made this somewhat unique. The guy didn't have a mask on, so you could see him, who he was.
Yeah, they gotta fix that. Can't let somebody's identity be. He's assaulting people on behalf of the federal government.
It was quite obvious that the person he assaulted was not even someone that they were trying to detain.
Yeah,
and there was no confusion about who started it. Remember the one where like the guy was like had a weed whacker and he was cutting the lawn, and then they tackled him and tased him, and then they were like, well, he was running at us with the weed whacker first. Like there was no question about what was happening here. But I think however this went down, whether it was internal pressure, whether it was someone who decided to have a modicum of self-dignity and respect and the organization they work at, who the fuck knows. I will say this wouldn't have happened. This person wouldn't have been let go if people weren't filming it. And one thing they are trying to do is to make sure that people can't film what's happening with ICE, right? They are trying to chill not just speech, but protest. And so part of all these orders Trump signed this week about cracking down on Antifa and left-wing organizations and left-wing violence, what they really want is they don't want people to show up and protest ICE. They don't want people to film them. They don't want people to know what they're actually doing. And so I think it's a lesson for all of us to keep it up and go out there, be nonviolent, be careful. You don't have to get up in police officers' faces or ICE officers' faces, but you can certainly stand by from a safe distance and film what's going on.
And that's a small part of a larger whole that we've seen thus far, where when people are making their voices heard, we've seen that it's having some impact. I mean, and granted, this is not some new phenomenon where like boycotting or protesting is going to have an impact, but it's especially pronounced this week, not just with what we just saw with ICE, but also with the Kimmel situation. There was a major boycott that resulted in Disney opting to bring Kimmel's show back onto the air, which I'm virtually assured would not have. Which I'm virtually certain would not have happened if it wasn't for that boycott, because as it stood, Disney felt like the only downside in this whole scenario was undermining Trump, and they didn't think about the fact that, okay, if there's a flip side to that, which is that our consumers are going to have a say and they're going to cancel en masse. And I wouldn't be I mean, we don't know what the numbers look like in terms of how effective the boycott was, but I wouldn't be surprised if there were tens or hundreds of thousands of cancellations. And so when they felt that pain and the only language they talk is financial, then they say, okay, maybe it's actually worse to kowtow to Trump, to capitulate to Trump, and to leave, our talent twisting in the wind and basically give a big fuck you to our consumer base. But then we just have news as of today that Sinclair announced, and Sinclair is one of the affiliate stations, the affiliate groups that owns these affiliate stations where ABC is broadcast. They announced today, quote, "Over the last week, we've received thoughtful feedback from viewers, advertisers, and community leaders representing a wide range of perspectives. Our decision to preempt this program," meaning Kimmel's program, "was independent of any government interaction or influence, and that they will bring Kimmel's show back onto ABC stations on Friday." And so this is already a right-wing media group. There is a really famous, there's a famous video, I believe Deadspin put it together, of all of the Sinclair broadcasters reading from the same script. This is a right-wing company. And so they outlasted even Disney. Why do you think, if they had the perfect pretext to be able to say, hey, we're never going to put Disney back on the air, even they opted to relent at the end of the day?
I'm sure they had pressure, right? And they're affiliates, and they lose that programming, and they just put something else in there that maybe they wouldn't get the same ratings. Maybe they felt public pressure. I also think that in the case of Disney, we don't know what kind of effect a boycott or people canceling their subscriptions may have had. One thing about elites capitulating to Donald Trump is that they're elites and they care about elite opinion, and they care about the media and politics and what they're hearing from even people that they know and their friends and other people in the business community. And I think that matters, And so I think that the more people make their voices heard, sometimes there are economic levers that we can pull, which is like saying, I don't want to subscribe anymore. But it's also just making noise. Like the people who are making these decisions and making them often from a place of cowardice, I think that, bucking them up and letting them know how you feel, it does matter.
Like Bob Iger making his legacy that he capitulated to Trump.
He doesn't want that.
Not once, but like multiple times.
He doesn't like Donald Trump, right? And so he can make business decisions and this and that, but he's thinking about his legacy. He doesn't want this shit.
And also it's worth noting too that I think, I'm curious your thoughts on it, but it feels like these companies are beginning to have some begrudging acceptance of the fact or acknowledgement of the fact that when they engage in some negotiation with Trump, you don't placate him. Like, you don't satisfy him. ABC News paid him $16 million, I guess in hopes that he would leave them alone. And instead of leaving ABC alone, he basically just smelled blood in the water, attacked them once, realized how weak they are, realized how willing to capitulate they were, realized how easy it was to exploit them, and threatened to do it again publicly after they decided to bring Jimmy Kimmel back onto the air. And so you gain nothing by negotiating with Trump. He is not a good faith negotiating partner. He will roll you the second it becomes politically convenient or financially advantageous for him to do so. And so do you think that there's some acknowledgement from these companies that engage in deal making with Donald Trump, that it doesn't buy them the thing that they think they're buying?
I certainly hope so. I mean, that was my first reaction when I watched Jimmy's monologue the night he came back, is I was like, you know what? We needed this. The country needs to hear someone with a big platform talk about how this guy is not fucking scary, and you can stand up to him and you can still make fun of him and nothing's going to happen. And I hope that Jimmy's monologue and even the actions of some other people, I hope it's giving people more courage. And also, just courage or not, the recognition that you just said that Donald Trump just wants more control and more power, and he's not going to stop. And so giving in is not going to fix this, and hiding is not going to fix it, because you might think that you will be able to avoid Donald Trump and his reach and the reach of the federal government. But at some point, if we don't stop it, it's coming for everyone. And unless you bend the knee and pledge loyalty to Donald Trump. And even then, he doesn't even take care of his most loyal supporters that well either. So it's uncomfortable, but we all got to fight. And we all got to pay attention. And we all got to get involved. Because if we don't, it's going to be a country that we don't want to live in.
Perfect place to leave off. Favs, I appreciate your time. For everybody who's watching right now, if you are not yet subscribed to Pod Save America's YouTube channel, I'm going to put that link right here on the screen, also in the post description. If you're listening on the audio podcast, of course, follow Pod Save America on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get podcasts. Favs, appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
To listen to the audio version of this episode, click the thumbnail right here on the screen and make sure to subscribe. And of course, to see more of my content, that subscribe button's on the screen as well.